Hello, everybody. Welcome to another edition, or the first edition for 2022 of All Things Aviation and Aerospace. My name's Vince Mickens with the Private Air Media Group, and I like to start things off exciting at the beginning of the new year, and I tell you what, today's show will be exactly that. It's going to be interesting, it's going to be inspiring, and all of the above. Really looking forward to this conversation. It is something that I found out about, even though I've been in aviation forever. I just found out about it a few months ago and said, wow, you guys do some amazing stuff. So today we're going to talk about a Christian-based mission flying, or mission aviation program with the Mission Aviation Fellowship and everything that they do worldwide to provide for those in need in hard to reach areas, villages and towns and places all over, and just the plethora of things that they do as an organization. And it's going to be fun from this standpoint because they're all pilots and AMPs. So we get to talk about a lot of flying aspect of this too. And that's one of the things that I'm really looking forward to hearing more about, is the fact, it's one thing for people to get their pilot's license and their different ratings and everything. It's another thing for them to add the mechanic side of it, or do it vice versa and get the AMP first and then follow up to become a pilot. Whatever the case may be, these guys have both ratings, or both certifications, if you will, and therefore they can fly and fix what they fly, which, as I was talking to them about a little bit earlier, probably comes in very handy in certain situations. So looking very much forward to having that conversation, and we'll go ahead and get things started. First, I'd like to introduce everybody, and then we'll start with talking a little bit about their background and how they got involved, and then we'll learn some history and also what the Mission Aviation Fellowship is all about. I'd like to start out with Daniel Whitehead. He is the Chief Operations Officer and I just found out two things about him that were interesting. One, he's been there for 30 years with Mission Aviation Fellowship. I have that right, Daniel?
Yep, that's right.
Yeah. The other thing I found out is that he speaks fluent Spanish. And why did I ask him in Spanish if he spoke Spanish? Because then he just took off, pun intended. So anyhow, Daniel, welcome to the program.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
It's great to have you, and really looking forward to hearing your perspective on things and talking more about all of the aspects of what you guys do. The next gentleman I'd like to introduce is David Carwell. So David is a program director in Haiti for the Mission Aviation Fellowship. And, David, I didn't ask you, are you in Haiti right now?
Yes, I am. Yes.
Okay, cool. So, well, it's great. Well, we know Haiti has decent Wi-Fi, at least where you are.
They do, thankfully.
Yeah, connected. David, it's great to have you to share with us your perspective on things, and particularly having you live from Haiti. That's kind of unique and very special. Thanks for being on the program today.
It's great to be here. Thank you.
It is really great to have you. We have another Daniel, Daniel Goheen, and Daniel got me good, because I was like, yeah, Daniel, you're kind of a newbie. And he's like, well, not exactly. You see, I've been around Mission Aviation Fellowship since when my dad flew and was involved with it. So David goes way back to childhood with the organization, but also has a history with it in terms of what he does now, et cetera, and so forth. And David, Daniel, sorry about that. The other Daniel, Daniel, looking forward to, one, getting your name right, and two, hearing more of your perspective, especially having grown up in the environment of the Mission Aviation Fellowship. Welcome to the show.
It's a privilege to be here. Thank you very much.
It's great. And last but not least, Gene Jordan. Gene, we have been in communication about putting this all together and getting everybody on board so we could have a really broad conversation about Mission Aviation Fellowship. You are head of the public relations aspect of things, and I must say you do a great job. You have provided me more than enough background information, and I do appreciate also you helping to pull everybody's schedule together so that we could be live together on this show. Welcome you to the show too.
Thank you. It's good to be here with you, Vince.
Yeah, that's great. As I was saying, so I've the show has been on the air for about a year, and I've covered a lot of different things related to aviation and aerospace, particularly in reference to career opportunities, career options, if you will, and things like that. And so one of those that was definitely flying under the radar until it was brought to my attention at the Career Day event a few months ago was missionary flying, missionary aviation, and the humanitarian aspects of what you guys do and things like that, and what this organization is. That, if I've got my information correct, is 75 years old now. And so it's been around for a minute. And you guys, you have a fleet of aircraft, and you just do an amazing amount of things. I think what we could do, just to give everybody that's watching and listening a overview, I'll start with you, Daniel Whitehead, and ask you if you could just kind of give an overview of the organization, dating back to its formation and, some of the things that it's doing.
Sure, Vince. MAF, like you said, is 75, almost 76 years old now. Started back 1945, end of World War II. Some aviators that came out of that conflict, folks who were Christians, and were looking for a way to serve with what they knew how to do, which was aviation, right? And so they were kind of asking the Lord what was next for them. And they became aware of some missionary activity in very remote places around the world, that it seemed like aviation could be a boon to that. And so that's what it was birthed out of, was being able to use the aircraft to go that last mile, right, to get to the very, very remote places in an effective way and an efficient way. And so those guys formed what was then called the Christian Missionary Airmen's Fellowship back in those days. And actually, our first pilot was a young lady named Betty Green, who had also flown in World War II with the Women Aviation Corps. And so she took our first airplane to Mexico and began to serve Bible translators there. From there, the organization grew into several countries around Central and South America, then jumped the pond and went to Indonesia, went over to Africa. And today, MAF US, and there's a larger MAF group that's, there are also MAFs that we have an international MAF that's based in England. We have a MAF Canada that's based with our neighbor to the north. But the MAF US group serves right now in about 10 countries. We have a fleet of around 45 aircraft, and serving, like you said, mission needs, humanitarian needs, even some flying for governments who need to get into the last mile in their remote parts of their countries. And so that's kind of the quick version of what MAF is all about.
Sure. The other thing that's definitely, and all of you have spoken about when we were in pre-show, and that is that it is God's calling for all of you to have become a part of MAF. And I think that's really important to point out, that each one of you in your different ways said that the bottom line on this is what this was a calling for you, not just a happenstance. It was something that you felt that you should become involved in. And all of you have been involved a long time. And I can tell from the conversations that we've had thus far that you all love what you do. Gene, you have also been a part of MAF for quite a while. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your background, how you got involved? Gene, where are you from, and where'd you grow up, and how'd you get into it?
Yeah, Vince, it's a story that I can look back on quite a few years now, but I actually grew up in the country of Ecuador. Both my parents were musicians, and they worked with a shortwave broadcast station, and they did a lot of music down there. So I grew up in Ecuador, and as long as I can remember, I knew that there was a little MAF airplane down in the edge of the jungle in Ecuador. Then as I got older, particularly in high school, I would go down to that Mission Aviation Fellowship base right on the edge of the jungle, little town called Shell, and it was named after the Royal Dutch Shell Oil Company that was out looking for oil in the 30s. They put it in airstrip, and so MAF arrived in Ecuador in 1948. I arrived a few years after that. And during high school, I'd go and I would wash the airplanes when they came home from the muddy airstrips. I would load them, tie down the loads, fuel the airplanes, sweep the hangar, anything to get a ride. And during high school, I got quite a few rides, and I saw how the airplane was instrumental in helping communities that were isolated because, in this case, of the Amazon jungle. We brought patients into the hospitals, we moved missionaries around, we helped put schools in, and MAF was kind of like the glue that held a bunch of different work around the jungle together.
Sure.
So like you said, it was during those high school days that in seeing that and helping with it, and my own asking, okay, God, what do you want me to do with my life? I want to make it count for you and to help other people. And I just saw that aviation did this. So I came up to the US and got my commercial instrument, A&P, flight instructor ratings, joined MAF, and they assigned me right back to Ecuador. So I grew up there for 18 years, and then I flew there for 22 years. And yeah, there's some days when you don't feel like flying, but as I look back, I really enjoyed what we did there in the
What? Don't feel like flying? Really?
No, after you've made 18.
I got you. I'm just giving you a hard time. But, I have to ask you a couple of things. One, in the early days, what kind of aircraft were you guys using to do some of the missions you were just talking about?
I started off in a Cessna 180 and Cessna 185.
Tail dragger.
The 185 with a pod on the belly was a huge beast of an airplane.
Yeah.
And it did a good job. And then
great utility aircraft.
It is. I had a lot of fun. The 180 was a little funner to fly because a little lighter and it got up out of the mud a little quicker. But a good utility airplane. And then our program moved into turbocharged 206s because we were flying patients up to the capital city of Quito. It was 9,300 feet above sea level. The 185s, they didn't like to go there. The turbocharged 206s did a better job.
So one of the things, and I may have mentioned this at the beginning of the show, that you guys all have in common, all of you as guests on the show today, you're pilots and mechanics. So I'll start with you, Gene, and ask you, what made you add A&P as part of your flying experience and background?
Well, that's a simple answer because MAF required it. I mean,
okay.
Airplanes are, and at that time we were flying pretty much the single engine little Cessnas. We did all of our own maintenance, and we still do. So it's a requirement to have your A&P because of where we operate.
Gotcha. Yeah. And as I had mentioned too, it does come in handy to be able to fix your own plane when you do run into a problem. So especially if you're in remote areas, et cetera, and so forth, where you may not have immediate access to parts, et cetera, and that type of thing. So that makes total sense. I'm going to guess that you're fluent in Spanish also, Gene.
Por supuesto.
There we go. David, tell us a little bit about you and your background and how you became involved in the Missionary Aviation Fellowship, Mission Aviation Fellowship.
I grew up in the Midwest, East Central Illinois, and in a farming community, and I just loved being around farming. And then when I found out about missionary aviation, it was like, wow, I think that's something special for me. And as I was learning who God had made me to be and how I was gifted, I just really latched onto mission aviation and have enjoyed it ever since. So I went to Moody Bible Institute, where I received my training in missionary aviation, and got started with Bible training, and then got my A&P license, and then added the other pilot ratings, and then chose a mission organization to serve with. There were a number of organizations use airplanes, But I felt like the Lord really led me to MAF, and I have enjoyed serving with them so much. It's just a way that I can help people. You help physically, help emotionally, and spiritually, the needs that people have. And the airplane is just a wonderful tool to do that. And being able to go into isolated places. Haiti's not a real big place, but it does have a lot of isolated people. And you realize that so many don't have access to electricity or running water or things that we're just so used to. Being able to transport teams and people out into the rural areas has just been a real blessing. I've really enjoyed it.
So how did you end up, did you select Haiti, or was it suggested, or how did you end up in Haiti?
I applied to the organization, and then the F was accepted, and then they assigned applicants to different regions, and then you work with the regional manager for a final assignment. And so there was a need in Haiti at the time I joined the organization, and so that's where I went.
Gotcha. Daniel, the other Daniel. Daniel, how about you? Tell us a little bit about your background and your involvement. Well, tell us about Dad and you hanging out there with Dad flying, and what was that like, and how did you grow from that?
My earliest memories are in Zaire, riding in the back seat of a 185 that my dad was flying. He was my hero. I just admired him. I loved airplanes my whole life. Never really thought about becoming an MAF pilot until late in high school. I felt a call to missionary work first. And then since it was about the same time I was trying to figure out what to do after high school, I prayed over about 34 different vocational options that I felt would fit me.
You know, I'm still in awe. I have 3 kids, so you know I'm still in awe of the 34 different options. And all 3 of my children, they should be praying right about now. But go ahead.
My dad had told me the story about how when he was a sophomore in high school, some youth director had asked him what he's going to do when he grew up, and he didn't have a clue. And so he sat down and did the same kind of exercise. So he had told that story my whole life. And so when I got to my junior year, I was like, well, it's about time I figure out what's coming next.
So that's when you decide to apply it. So go ahead. You narrowed it down?
Yeah. So I narrowed it down to 2. One was computer technology and the other one was aviation. And both are disciplines that MAF. Yeah. Both of them are disciplines that MAF uses. Sure. Aviation being the primary, and computer technology is kind of a supporting discipline that we have. And you can probably go to our website and find out a whole lot more about that. But I prayed over those last 2 and decided that aviation would be a little bit more of a difficult road to start on. And if God was going to open the door, I was going to try that one first. And if he was going to close the door, then I would go on to the other one. And if that closed, then I'd rethink everything. And very quickly, I attended LaTurner University in Longview, Texas. And very quickly, freshman year, aviation got even more into my blood. Took to it like a fish to water and didn't really look back. Graduated with a bunch of debt and spent 10 years in the industry as an A&P, working on business jets to gain experience and pay off the debt.
Yeah, you were at Duncan Aviation, right?
That's correct.
Utah, in Provo, Utah?
Yep.
Okay. Very good. Yeah. That's a great organization, by the great MRO. So I hope you had a good experience with that.
I learned a lot about quality, and Duncan really helped set me up for MAF's standards of maintenance, because Duncan, just like MAF, has a very high quality. They set the bar pretty high for quality. And one of my favorite things was, hey, we're the repair station. The customer brought the airplane to us. Let's send it out with good hardware. Like, that was like just one of the simple things I picked up there. And, you know, in the short time I've been here at MAF, I've seen that, you know, if it's not perfect, do it again.
Yeah. I know the Duncan family well. Todd Duncan is their 3rd generation boss now. I know he and his dad, and they both fly a lot together. And then their sons are now part of Duncan. So they're the fourth generation come up. So it's one of those that continues on and on. But anyhow, didn't mean to get sidetracked on that, but that's pretty cool stuff. Aviation,
Yeah,
it's easy to get
I
sidetracked.
really enjoyed working there. And
yeah. One of the things that's really important to our viewers and listeners with regard to all things aviation and aerospace is what it's like in terms of the environment. So we are going to talk about the different things that MAF does, but can you each give like a day or a week of what it's like, and give us an example of some of your missions or what it's like in a day what do you get called, the phone call to do, or have the meeting and say, we're going to go do this next week, or give us some examples like that. That can come from any of you, please.
I'll go ahead and start. And I'll start by saying in each of our programs, Vince, things look a little bit differently. Every country is a little bit different in the way it works. So I'll give you my experience. I spent 11 years in Venezuela, a few years in Nicaragua, and then 13 years in Ecuador. And in Venezuela, for example, our flying there was pretty much missionary support and medical. So we lived in a small town at the end of the road. From there, it was jumping off place into the jungle. We maintained a hangar there with our 3 aircraft, and it was about between 5 to 8 other families living there with us who were part of the team. And a typical day for me there would be a long flight out into the Amazon jungle region of Venezuela. So probably at least an hour and a half to 2 hours out. Usually spend some time out in that Amazon region doing some short hops around to different villages.
At what altitude, just not to get too technical, but at what altitude, and how much did you have to deal or not deal with air traffic control and things like that?
Yeah. So usually we, fly out at 5,500, 7,500, fly back at 6,500 or 8,500. You're not going too high.
Generally VFR.
Always VFR in Venezuela.
Always VFR.
That was the only way that we operated. And once we left our home base, usually didn't talk to any air traffic control people the rest of the day. You're out in a very remote region where there's nothing else going on. Now, we would talk a lot on the HF radio, which is how we maintained our flight following with our home base. Okay. So you're always on the HF radio, letting people know where you are and what you're doing.
Did HF high frequency, better range?
High frequency, right. So that's not line of sight. I mean, you can get a hold of anybody sitting on the ground or wherever. So so that would be it. And so it would be a pretty long day and a lot of loading and unloading of the airplane. You have to do all of that. Dealing with your passengers, figuring out who you're going to take on the next leg, all of that kind of stuff. And at the same time, trying to encourage the missionaries who are living way out there in the sticks and, kind of be their connection to the outside world as well. And make sure that you take the mail. You don't even want to get out of the airplane if you forgot to take the mail out there. So there's, a bunch of things like that.
Some things that are still very important.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah. No, that's interesting, though. That's really interesting. I'll go to the other Daniel and ask you, Daniel, how about you? What type of missions? Give us something recent or an example, please.
Well, I'm so new. I haven't even left headquarters yet. But for me, a typical day is I show up, check in with the shift supervisor, and I'm either working on the buildups of airplanes preparing to go to the field. Some of them get put in containers and some of them get ferried across the ocean. Or the other option that I often get assigned is to help we maintain a very small fleet of aircraft here at headquarters that we train all of our new pilots, myself included, in. And they need 100-hour inspections and 50-hour inspections and annual and stuff like that. So I've just been, it's not too different from the shift work I did at Duncan Aviation. I show up in the morning, find out what I'm doing, work all day, and then go home at the end of the day.
So you guys basically have flight operations there at your home airport where you do all of the things that, including the training. You mentioned that you have a Redbird simulator and and other computer-based simulators and things like that to keep you guys current, are up to speed with everything, and to acclimate, I guess, new people as well as people that are regularly flying with you or flying for you. Is that a good summation?
Yeah, that's good, Vince. I mean, so here at our headquarters, which is where I live now in my role as a COO, we do all of the screening for our applicants, and that involves some technical flying and some technical evaluation in maintenance. And we have a simulator that we use in that process. Once our guys are accepted, then they go through what we call our standardization process, which, every organization knows the right way to fly, right? So we have our way.
Okay.
And so we teach our guys, all of that stuff. And from there, then they take off and they spread out around the world. And then the flying looks different, of course, once they're out there. But yeah, we have a fleet here that we use for training. And then our maintenance guys here also support our worldwide fleet by airplanes come here for refurbishment. We prepare airplanes for the field here, and we send our guys out. I don't know if Daniel's gone out yet, but usually our guys head out at some point to spend some time out on the field, helping with a larger project, a larger maintenance project or something like that out in the boonies. Yeah,
this would seem obvious, but I take it you guys, because of the different environments, and you guys fly in a variety of environments that have weather conditions, the humidity factor, et cetera, and so forth. Do you have a kind of a standardization that you teach to like new pilots or that are coming on board to know how to deal with that? You just mentioned earlier, Daniel, that once they get to where they're going, get to another country or something like that they'll probably have to make adjustments according to where they are and things like that. So is that done there, or some of it done back at headquarters?
So our initial standardization is done here at headquarters. And yes, we do things like airstrip evaluation. Right. Not every place we go to is on the chart. You may not have the information that you need about it. We do lots of mountain flying, terrain flying. We teach a lot of those kind of principles here. And then once they get to the field, they will also work with an instructor pilot there to learn the particulars of that place and get what we call a field orientation. They'll be checked out in the airstrips there and do all that kind of stuff. So it's kind of a two-pronged training that goes on.
Sure. Gene, would you like to chime in on that and give your perspective?
On the training or on an average day?
We'll start with an average day.
Okay. The base at Shell, Ecuador is 3,000 feet above sea level.
Okay.
So the nights you slept well, the days got warm, and we'd fly northeast, east, and southeast out of our base. The Andes Mountains were always behind us as we flew out. And 10 to 12 minutes out, the jungle dropped way down, and it got hot and muggy all the time. The biggest thing we faced every day was rain. We averaged an inch of rain a day.
Wow.
So we didn't have the frontal movements that we have up here, up farther north. We would just have a lot of rain come. My flying was pretty much equally divided into thirds. A third was medical emergency flying. The number one reason we launched a medical flight was snake bite. Somebody was bitten by a snake, and they told me that 90% of the snakes in the Ecuadorian jungle are venomous. I rounded that up to 100% as far as I was concerned.
Probably rightfully so.
We would have a young childbirth. The baby wasn't coming and she was bleeding. We would bring her into a hospital, fall out of a tree and break his leg and the bone sticking out. So about a third of the flights were medical emergency. We worked very closely with a small missionary hospital that had international doctors and nurses there, along with Ecuadorians as well. And they were very close to the hangar. About a third of the flights were with different missionary organizations. And then they, in turn, worked in different ways. Some worked in establishing new churches. Some worked with leadership development of those churches. Others worked in community development. There were some agriculture projects. Missionaries took in cattle and introduced cattle raising into some of the Indian groups. So about a third of our flight was for different missionary organizations and what they specialized in. When I started flying in Ecuador, we found out that the moms and dads didn't name their kids until they're about 2 years old, 2.5 years old. That's because they would give them water from the river. Life was in the river. They swam in the river. They fished in the river. Their cattle was in the river. They pooped in the river. Life, we just need water to live. Little babies would get river water, drink river water, get parasites, get diarrhea, become dehydrated, and die very quickly. So putting in one spigot of fresh water from a well that was dug in a community and teaching them, drink this water, play in the river, bathe in the river, everything in the river, but drink this water, your kids will live. And over the years, we saw that happen. So helping people in their community, in their quality of life, and then showing them we actually care for you, allowed us to then say, we care for you because there's a God that loves all of us deeply.
Sure.
He loves you, he created you. And we can't just go into an organization or into a community and just start preaching it. And we got to show them by what we do that we really, really care for them. So we did that through medical, through community development, through the mission work, and averaged about 14 minutes of stage length in our flights. So Dan had some longer flights in Venezuela. We had very short flights where we would go out and hop, and hop around the rain and try to miss the rain and just keep busy every day that it didn't rain.
Yeah, I would think that's really amazing what you just shared. But I would think that, and this applies for all of you, but particularly with what you just said, Gene, that the communities that you were serving and helping, that you serve and help, are probably extremely appreciative and supportive in whatever way they can to make life as easy as possible for you, since you're facilitating things that are positive for them in terms of providing some of the things that you just talked about, or just rushing somebody for medical care and things like that. And I bring that up for a couple of reasons, probably obvious. One of it is, to me, that you're doing God's work on their behalf. So I would imagine there's a lot of appreciation for that. The other part the part two of that, or the other side of that, is you just mentioned, for example, that most snakes are venomous and things like that. How do you guys as pilots in these areas that have these kind of challenges and other kind of challenges stay safe and feel safe and protected from the environment, et cetera?
Well, I'll just respond real quickly to part of that, Vince, and then let some of the others respond as well. The communities learned very quickly. Now, MAF went into Ecuador in 1948, and I showed up in 1977. So the communities knew that the airplanes and the people in the airplanes cared for them. When I was flying there was 242 airstrips in our airstrip directory. And so they knew that we were there to help them in many different ways. I never felt threatened by them. I would get stuck out in the jungle because of weather and have to spend the night, sometimes in the airplane, sometimes on the floor of the schoolhouse, but never, ever, ever felt threatened by them at all. MAF has quite a few standards of operation to keep us safe. And then you need to keep your head up and looking around and seeing what's happening in the country you're in, because they're all so very, very different. But I never, ever felt threatened by the communities I landed in.
Sure. And I didn't want to imply that you may have felt threatened. I was thinking of it more of just these communities just really appreciating getting this help and you being able to reach such remote areas thanks to having the aviation as that that way of doing so. So I'll open it up to the floor to everybody. Go ahead, Gene. You sound like you were going to say something else.
Well, I was just going to say that there are some areas we fly in where there could be threats. In my case, I didn't feel that way, but we operate in some countries where we need to be very,
Vigilant.
very, yet the people living remotely out away from the bigger cities, they have so many needs that we want to meet to help them understand how much God loves them.
Yeah. David or Daniel, you guys want to share a perspective on that too?
I got a couple thoughts. The first one is that one of the reasons I came to love aviation is that every time I could ride along to one of the village airstrips with my dad, you pull up and it's the community event of the day. Everybody from the whole community comes out to see the airplane, and everybody's having fun and smiling. And when the airplanes get ready to take off, the kids line up behind to feel the prop wash because it's hot and humid, and they want that fan effect from the propeller. They just love it.
That's pretty good.
When an airplane parks, every scrap of shade that the wings produce is taken up by people.
Mm.
It's
that makes a lot of sense.
So, the arrival of the airplane gives the same kind of excitement that Christmas morning does when you're a real young child. But then my other thought on that is I grew up in Zaire, and in the mid-90s, we had to have a bag packed at all times ready to go because there were grumblings and musings of potential civil war. And in 1996, there was a civil war, and that's why we left.
Yeah. So it can go any kind of way. Just depends on the situation. How about you, David? What's your perspective on all this?
Well, kind of just to describe the scenario where I live. Port-au-Prince is the capital of Haiti, and we have a 10,000-foot runway here with an ILS and a VOR. No taxiway, but our hangar is in the capital, and so I'm shooting an approach with a 737 behind me, and we're mingling with airline traffic at our home base. But then we're going out into rural areas that are short runways that are rock or grass. A few of them are paved now, but to just remote places. And so a typical day for us would be a lot of times we're making connections for international travelers, people that are arriving from the United States, Canada, or Europe, and then we're taking them on into the rural areas. Often we can do that the same day. And then when they're ready to go back home, we're able to go in the morning and pick them up and get them on their way seamlessly. So that's a big part of what we do. We also do medevac flights here, and our probably most common medevac is somebody who's injured on a motorcycle.
Really? Wow.
Yeah.
So a traffic accident.
Yes. Mm-hmm. And then we've also, in the 20-some years I've been in Haiti, unfortunately, there have been several natural disasters. And since we were here, we were able to really respond and be helpful in those cases. That's involved earthquakes, the big one in 2010, of course, and then just last year, August 14th, there was a very bad earthquake as well in a different area of the country. Hurricanes, floods, landslides, all those things have been part of the struggles that Haiti goes through, and aviation's been a big part of responding to those needs and being able to help out. So it's a lot of fun. One thing I'll mention in particular that I thought was really a cool application of technology. After a disaster is hit, after a hurricane, basically as soon as it was clear enough to fly, we've been able to launch an airplane and start taking pictures of different areas that were impacted, bridges, major buildings or whatever, and then linking those pictures according to their lat and long. So you can go to Google Earth and just mouse over a particular area and you see, this is what it looks like from the air. And
Wow.
That was super helpful in responding and finding out where the needs are following hurricanes.
So you bring up something that I was going to ask you guys about, and that's coordinating with other humanitarian organizations, and even, for example, for the things you're talking about with a major disaster with the U.S. government, FEMA or whatever is utilized to help with situations. Do you guys have procedures or whatever in place to be able to do that? And for example, with the Latin lung on photographs, is that the kind of stuff you'd send to a FEMA or to other organizations?
Yes, we have a disaster relief wing or department.
Okay.
And they've helped us out wherever in the world there is a need for that. They kind of add their expertise and will join us on the field. It depends on the scenario, what the real needs are. But yes, we're more and more able to coordinate with other organizations that are doing the same thing. Samaritan's Purse, for example, they loaned us a caravan, and we were able to use that. We operated it, but they provided the airplane, and so we did 100, some flights just for this last August earthquake, sharing resources like that, so we can get the job done.
And to your point, technology has made that a lot easier to do in this day and age. So, listen, we have about 20 minutes, and one of the things I want to make sure we cover is a little bit more specifics about Mission Aviation Fellowship and what it does. When I was going through your website and kind of really doing a deep dive, you guys cover a lot of areas. So I'm gonna throw it back to you, Daniel Whitehead, and ask you if you could start and tell us the different areas that you guys focus on and that you have departments that cover, et cetera, and so forth. Let's do a deeper dive into the organization.
Sure, Vince. So in my role as the Chief Operations Officer, I oversee our operations both here in the U.S. and internationally. So here in the U.S., I have a safety and quality department. I have the Director of Operations, Director of Maintenance, who take care of our U.S. operations. We do hold a Part 135 Air Operations Certificate, so we manage that from here as well. And then internationally, I work with 4 regional directors that would be in Latin America, in Africa, in Indonesia, and in Eurasia. And so regionally, geographically, we have programs in those areas and operating aircraft in like I said, I think 10 different countries right now around the world. So that's kind of the geographical spread of how things are. Our main operations here in the U.S. and then the 4 geographical regions around the world. And then as David mentioned, I do oversee the disaster response department as well. And that's a team that will mobilize and go to whatever part of the world we need it to go to in the event of a disaster or a crisis. Sure.
I'm going to throw this out to all 4 of you, continuing with what you were saying. And so, you have areas like that you specify in terms of what you guys do: community development, education, church support, disaster response, technology, a disaster response, which you just talked about, technology, which we touched on a little bit, making disciples, Bible translation, training, and medical care. So I just kind of threw all those out there. People can go to your website and see more details about it, but wanted to hear it from any of you to tell a little bit more about some of those areas.
Here in Haiti, I see that a lot of those things are combined. So there may be a missionary in a given area. They build a church. Well, what is that church used for the other 6 days of the week? They've got a school in it. They have an agriculture program. Oh, they drilled a well. So, I mean, it just becomes a lot of different things that are grouped together and involved in the outreach to the community there.
Okay.
So we see a lot of those things combined in many of the missions that we support.
Yeah, Gene, you agree with that?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, MAF as an organization, we are not affiliated with any particular church or denomination. In fact, we have pilots and mechanics and technicians from many different church backgrounds. We do have a very traditional statement of faith. In other words, this is what MAF believes. And somebody's going to join MAF has to agree that, yeah, this is how I believe as well. But then we serve many, many different organizations that are involved in different things around the world. And one thing that I appreciated about MAF is in the morning, I might fly up in the north jungle of Ecuador. In the afternoon, I might be down in the south. And after a week or a month of flying, we get a, pun intended, a bird's eye view of everything that's happening in the jungle, in the different communities, what the problems are here, there, and the other. And so MAF kind of becomes a go-to organization if other missions want to know what's happening over here, what do you need over there, what's going on. We see it day in and day out and kind of pull everything together. And I appreciated what MAF did and does through that ability.
Yeah, wow. You got me excited about it. That's really great, though. That's very motivating to hear you the way you speak about it. And all of you speak the same about that. So you're definitely on the same page. I'll go to Daniel Goheen. Daniel, what excites you beyond what you've already told us about MAF and what you do with it?
I kind of want to echo Gene, just the way there's this cohesive glue that pulls a lot of different church groups and denomination groups together. I really love serving other people. One of my favorite things in the world is to be able to use my talents to encourage somebody. And I believe that is really at the heart of what MAF does. We want the world to see that God loves them and that love can transform their lives. And that goes right along with my personal calling to want to encourage people around me through my talents and skills. I guess what I see the most is just the way that groups that might not otherwise know that they can work together are connected through what we do. And I just love the diversity of different ministries that we participate with.
Yeah, that's really neat that you guys deal with so many different faiths, if you will, and denominations, all trying to serve the same purpose. David, how about you? What gets you excited about all the things that you've been involved with MAF?
Well, we fly to not a great number of airstrips, so we're pretty familiar with the routes and the airstrips, but what makes us special is the people that we serve. And that just never really gets old. I really enjoy it. Another thing that I find is diversity. We have schedules that are planned out. We have people who request flights a year in advance, and we'll maybe confirm it by 6 months. So we've got a well-orchestrated schedule and plan. But do you think it happens that way every day? No. We get up and we go to the airport, and the schedule goes out the window sometimes. An airline's late. There's a flat tire here. There's things happen. Every day there's something interesting that will happen, evolve. And people need us for something that we weren't planning 6 months ago. We weren't planning for it yesterday, but we can help. We're here.
I was going to say, you guys have the flexibility to pivot and do what you need to do.
That's what I really enjoy.
Under the leadership of Dan Whitehead, right, Daniel?
That's right.
So yeah, Vince, I would say just real quickly, one of the great things for me about MAF in my life, and I've seen it in a lot of my friends' lives as well, is that God has allowed us to do something that we really love to do. I mean, we're airplane nuts, like all the airplane nuts out there, right? I mean, aviation is that way, right? It gets under your skin, and there's something about it.
Ask my wife and kids.
And so we're that way, and God has allowed us to use that in a really interesting way and exciting way around the world, and that's just a mixture of two things that I feel blessed every day that I get the opportunity to do that. I'm still amazed every time I start an airplane that MAF trusts me enough to let me fly it, but it's really fun to have both of those things together in my life.
you know, it's a word that's probably overused, but awesome comes to mind with what you guys do individually and as an organization. I just think it's incredible, the type of work that you do, and hope that that people seeing this will want to provide support one way or another to help you guys continue with your mission. As we spend the last 10 minutes or so with the show, I wanted to really zero in on what I think the viewers are going to really want to know, and that is, you know, the opportunities. One of the things that I think is really key is you guys are a full-blown organization, operationally, administratively, et cetera. I mean, you've got to cover a lot of territory to do what you do. But, you know, what's interesting to me is, you know, I hear, so I'm going to back up a little bit. So in 2020, during the height of the pandemic, the first height of the pandemic and everything, you know, a lot of people, a lot of students in college in their junior or senior year were kind of at a crossroads because they thought, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? I was on this professional pilot track, or I was on this track to do this in aerospace or whatever. And now I may have to pivot. I've got to kind of regroup because everything's kind of come to almost a screeching halt, particularly on the professional pilot tracks. The airlines shut down a bit, et cetera, and so forth. And literally somebody graduating that was going to be going into a program, that program was now on hiatus and things like that. So it made a lot of people, and I had some of these students on the show talk about how they were rethinking what they want to do. The other part that I've heard so much about even from my own I have three grown daughters, as well as, you know, other kids around that age in their teens and 20s and that type of thing. They have a mindset of wanting to do something meaningful. So when I heard you guys talking earlier about, you know, actually literally praying to God and saying, hey, give me some guidance. What do you think I should be doing? What do you think would be fulfilling for me and serve a good purpose, which is kind of what we're talking about, right? And so, you know, I hear them saying that, and I'm thinking, well, you know, it doesn't get much more meaningful than something like what Mission Aviation Fellowship does. And the fact that you guys do it globally and you do it so with such a diverse perspective, et cetera, and so forth. So in the last part of this, as we wrap the program up, I kind of want to hear from you guys to share with our viewers what you believe what's the tie-in? What do you think is the opportunity for them? And again, the fact that you guys somewhat fly under the radar sometimes. So, you know, these kids in school or even just out of school, they're not thinking, oh, I'm going to go work for MAF. You know, they're thinking about an airline or corporate aviation or charter or whatever, or air traffic controller and things like that. And here it is, you guys have an organization that does something that could be a wonderful opportunity. Told you guys I can talk, but I'll open the floor.
Let me start by saying yes. I mean, we hope that you know, God will bring us lots and lots of people. I mean, I sit around sometimes with our executive team here thinking about where we could go next, what we could do next. And many times, you know, the human resource thing is the thing that holds us back. And we're like, well, we just don't have anybody we can put there right now. So, yeah, if anybody sees this who is, you know, a Christian, who's a follower of Jesus and who's interested in aviation, man, I hope you will consider looking into Mission Aviation, because it's a very fulfilling way to use the gifts that God has given you, the technical gifts, and also serve your fellow man and serve the Lord. So I hope that some folks will see this and go, hey, that's exactly what I've been waiting to hear about. And we'd be happy to talk to them. I mean, we need them.
Absolutely.
And
Gene?
Vince, we told you about our requirements for a commercial instrument license and then the A&P rating. As we have moved into some of the bigger airplanes, Kodiaks and Caravans, we really value maintenance specialists. I mean, pilots, like, dime a dozen, but a good mechanic is really valued. And also we have another kind of a unique thing. We are operating in some very remote areas, and a lot of our families are young families, and they have young kids. And so MAF, we also recruit and use teachers on a shorter term scale, come for a year or two or whatever. And we have maybe a school cooperative with 10 or 12 students in different grades, and this teacher would help them on work with education. So maintenance, education people, and I won't undercut Dan. Yeah, we do need pilots and mechanics.
Please.
And the other Dan, any perspective to share?
Man, I would go back to writing your list and praying over it. That would probably be my
I
first
knew you were going
thing.
to do that.
Yeah.
No. I actually, all joking aside, that's a really practical thing that your dad taught you that I think it would be helpful, particularly, and I'll put it from my perspective as a dad. There's so much influx of information, which is one of the reasons that I think that the younger generation is really having a difficult time trying to figure out what direction they want to go. The other part of it is what you guys talk about, and that's basically praying on it and looking for God's guidance to send you in the right direction. So I think that's actually a very good way as a process to do that. So I give you a hard time, Daniel, but in all reality, you and your dad quite practical. David?
Yeah, we need people. Our organization depends on donations. We need money. We need airplanes, yes, but really the limiting thing is staff to do it. And so there's so much more we could do if we had more people. And yes, we would invite more to join us. There is a commitment involved. It takes time to raise support. It takes time to learn a language. It takes time to prepare, but it's worth it. And I wouldn't want to do anything else.
Absolutely. Yeah. I'm going to take that as your words of inspiration, and I'm going to go back through everybody real quick. Daniel, Goheen, any other final words of inspiration?
Yeah, just a real quick thought. Like growing up, observing the MAF world in multiple countries, there's always been a staff shortage everywhere, all the time. And it can be discouraging for those of us who are serving when we just feel overburdened. Like there's more needs than we can meet because we don't have enough people. And so I would say, if you think that God might be calling you into this kind of aviation, be ready to put in some hard work to get there. And we really look forward to seeing you.
Absolutely. Gene?
Well, I think the folks that founded MAF were wise when they called us Mission Aviation Fellowship. We come as missionaries. We get to fly, as Dan said. But if you're considering this type of work, it has to be that you want to use your life to help others. So the flying is secondary. The primary thing is letting people know how much God loves them and cares for them. And we're going to show you how that's worked out in life.
Couldn't have said it better. Daniel Whitehead, I'll let you take us home.
Well, Vince, thanks for letting us have the opportunity to talk to you today and to get a chance to tell your audience about MAF and what goes on here. It's exciting. It's fun work. It's exciting work. It's challenging. We're in some difficult places, but I would encourage folks to take a look at our website. There's a lot of stuff you can see there about what it looks like around the world, the places we serve. And we look forward to maybe some of your listeners joining us someday. And that would be awesome.
Well, absolutely. I know that if anybody touched base with me, I will pass them your way. Gentlemen, we have run out of time, but thank you very much for the opportunity to talk with all of you about what Mission Aviation is and does, and each of you about your individual backgrounds and inspiration to do what you do. I think it's a super, super worthy cause. and very happy that I have a platform that we could at least let my audience know about the organization, about you guys. So you guys sound like everybody else in aviation. Aviation is wide open for people that want to pursue it. So, and this is just another really great opportunity that you guys are presenting. So thank you again for taking the time to be here, and I wish you all the best, and God bless you all.
Thank you, Vince.
Thank you, Vince.
Thank you.
Thank you. God bless.
All right, you guys take care. That's it for all things aviation and aerospace this week. Everyone take care, be safe, and have a good one.